February 29th, a rare occurrence. Once every 4 years does a day like this happen. February 29th, as you may know, is not a yearly event. It is a leap day on a leap year. And I just wanted to record a live podcast today because it has been some time since I've done my last one, so that we could catch up on all the craziness that's going on. I've been talking about a lot of it on Twitter, and I thought it was time that we got a video to discuss. And I open up the chat to everyone who wants to contribute to the conversation. I would love that. I just thought it was time to get some stuff on the record, and pretty much discuss the state of affairs going on right now. As you may know, I have another channel called Belligerent Nature, which is my production company. But this channel, I try to kind of produce my own personal opinions, and just try not to mix it with the other stuff, and not to confuse people. But if you are tuning in, thank you so much for doing that. I got a stream going on here. We're on Twitch. We're on YouTube, and we're taking our time. We're taking our time because that's all we can do at this point in time. Obviously, if you are tuning in live at 12 noon on Saturday, February 29, 2020, there is a lot in the news, and probably the biggest thing in the news is the coronavirus. It's freaking people out. It's freaking me out. I'm actually getting a little sick, and I'm a little afraid that it could be something more, but I'm not too worried. What does worry me, however, is how things are currently being handled in the administration when it comes to the coronavirus, and kind of in politics as a whole. There are both sides to everything, especially with epidemics. Is that the right word? Pandemics? Such as this latest one. So, I mean, to give you an example, on the right, in the administration, we have a commander-in-chief who's not really taking this very seriously. I mean, we have, on one hand, scientists who are warning that this disease is spreading and could potentially be very dangerous, very fast. And then we have the president who is very focused on the stock market, and covering his own back with this. And a lot of people get upset about that, those on the right who defend this president. But I will give that side some credit when in the terms of the left, and pretty much any side, using anything that they can to politicize it, whether it's a mass shooting, an earthquake, a hurricane, or the coronavirus, or a pandemic. And for the left to use this as their latest anti-Trump attacks, I think is very cheap. It's a cheap shot, and something you kind of expect from politics in 2020. They will use anything. I think I was watching Bill Maher last night, and someone brought up, if there was a Martian invasion, how it would be politicized to use against the other side. You'd probably hear things like, the Martians, Trump doesn't know how to handle the Martians, the right wants the Martians to take over, and immigration, all that jazz. And I think it's true. I mean, we are in a highly political politicized era right now, and I don't see any signs of it slowing down. Oh, I want to turn that. I want to turn that on so we can hear what's going on. Um, so, so back on the coronavirus, I didn't want to talk too much about this as this is a political show. This little stream thing that I'm doing, but I did feel like that is kind of in a lot of people's consciousness right now, and it is important to kind of catch people up, see where people's heads are at. And one thing that surprised me, because my boss at work has been like hyper focused on the coronavirus for weeks now, and I kind of, mocked him in a way. I kind of thought it was funny how he's freaked out about this when there's been so many epidemics in our recent past, such as H1N1, swine flu, Ebola, and these things just kind of pass, right? They don't stay and develop into something like the Spanish flu or any of those diseases that really caused an outbreak and threatened humanity. And this is partly because we have such good technology nowadays. We have really good medicine, really good doctors, and again, the technology is phenomenal. And so I have faith in humanity as a whole and where we are now. So I'm not all that nervous that this will turn into an apocalyptic type of event. But what does worry me is how things can be mishandled, and we see evidence of that. Like let's use Katrina as an example. Katrina was handled so poorly that there were so many lives that were lost due to incompetence in the government. And there are so many other examples. I can't think of them all right now. But incompetence is the thing that can really lead to bad things happening down the road. And so when you look, and I'm not someone who likes to get on the anti-Trump train, because I feel like it's the easiest thing to do in the climate that we're at right now. Anti-Trump is literally every single comedian, every single show, all the mainstream media. It's all anti-Trump, and it's the easiest thing to do. And so, not that I'm not anti-Trump in a way, but it's like if you're just trying to get some clout and some cheap, unearned fame and applause, then go ahead and be anti-Trump. But I think it does take some courage to bring up other things that praise Trump in certain areas, but also doesn't show the left as some, angel-like entities that shall not be questioned. And it takes a lot of courage for people to do that in this time of day, because you will, especially in cancel culture, you will get shat on for that. But I do see a rise in that. I'll get a little bit on that later. But again, back on the coronavirus, I want to talk about how Trump thinks this is a hoax and why it's so hard to believe in science these days. It baffles me. But so I want to pull up an article real quick, kind of bring up some bullet points about the state of affairs in coronavirus right now. I pulled up a CNBC article in my edited version of this broadcast. I will kind of pull up the clip back where my guitar is behind me, and all the clips I play in this episode. But so basically, I'm reading an article that says Trump says the coronavirus is the Democrats' new hoax. Right. I'm sure we heard this a little bit before. President Trump says that Democrats are using the virulent, is that how you pronounce that? Virulent coronavirus as a hoax to damage him and his administration. The Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. Trump has said from a campaign rally in North Charleston, South Carolina, just yesterday, he said this is their new hoax. Trump obviously referring to the other hoaxes being Russiagate and Ukrainegate. Um, and to be quite honest, Russiagate was a hoax. And I'm just going to say it there for some people who do not want to hear it. But Russiagate was a fat hoax. The Democrats have been trying to find a way to kind of shift the attention away from their devastating loss from 2016. And this isn't a right-wing talking point. This is a talking point of reality for everyone who are not in the DC bubble and mainstream media bubble. But Russiagate has been a complete failure, which has been pushed by the liberal media as well as Democratic establishment trying to shift the conversation away from why the Democrats lost the election. And why did they lose the election? They pushed an establishment neoliberal candidate, the worst candidate in electoral history, to run against a game show host, and she lost. And instead of taking time to reflect and wonder why this happened, they immediately started using scapegoats such as Russia hacking the election to kind of shift the public consciousness into thinking that everything is okay. The new boogeyman, the new bad event that is the reason for the hell, the living hell that we live in today is Russia. So, is Trump right about using Russia as a reason to say this was a hoax? Yes, he's absolutely right. Now, Ukrainegate, another one. I think it's a little bit less of a hoax because I've said this before, but and I'm not trying to get into it, but just to kind of recap, calling a foreign leader to look into your political rivals looks bad. It's just simply not you're not. It's not a good thing to do, especially if you're president. Is it against the law? I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, it's really tough. You got to analyze this, and looking at what the Washington Post has said in the past. And again, I've talked about this before, but kind of them using the smallest pretext in his words to kind of justify it being against the law is just it's sketchy. It's all sketchy. All right, I diverge a little bit. The coronavirus, back on that topic here, which began in Wuhan, China, has now killed more than 2,800 people worldwide and infected more than 80,000 people. Now, the total number of cases in the U.S. was 63 as of the latest announcements, with most cases being former passengers on the Diamond Princess cruise ship evacuees from Wuhan. Now, President Trump said on Friday that this is a hoax and that the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. He said, and I quote, one of my people came up to me and said, Mr. President, they tried to beat you on Russia. That didn't work out too well. They couldn't do it. They tried the impeachment hoax. That was on a perfect conversation. Unbelievable. This is their new hoax, ladies and gentlemen. This is their new hoax. So it seems like Trump is using this as another. Again, I said it before that the left likes to politicize anything that happens in this administration against Trump, and it's true. If you defend the left during this, I mean, you got to be aware that this is a political thing. We're in a highly political time right now. Sorry. This is live, but it won't be after it's edited. But basically, so the left is using this as a political ploy to use it against Trump. Um, uh, but also, Trump is using this against the left, and he's pretty much saying that this is their latest reason. This is their latest hijacking of the media to make me look bad. Um, and in one way, he's right because it's true. The left is using this against him. On the other hand, it's off-putting to just normal people in this country who aren't super engaged in politics, kind of tired of the partisan back and forth between the left and the right, and more concerned about the well-being of themselves and their family and the normal everyday citizens of the country, just hoping that they have a government that is trying their hardest to keep them safe. And I don't blame those people for freaking out over what exactly, freaking out over Trump's comments and just the overall vibe that the administration really isn't taking this very seriously. Um, so, just to kind of explain it in a nutshell, uh, that's what's going on with the coronavirus, and apparently, I just got an update that Trump is going to hold a press conference at 1:30, about an hour from right now Eastern time. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, that's the coronavirus. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of catch us up with that because it is very important. Oh, last thing I wanted to say about it though, I thought this was pretty interesting. The fact that, all right, so I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, Trump put Mike Pence in charge of handling this whole thing from the administration, and immediately after that, I think it was the next day, I think it was Friday morning, the New York Times said that the CDC, which is um, our government institution to keep us safe in terms of health, they apparently can't come out with new updates and messaging about the coronavirus until it goes through Mike Pence first. Which is very alarming because when you have any government in charge of the messaging of science and technology to be kind of the lens before it reaches the people, that's not good because we just saw this happen in China. Because of the coronavirus and the amount of people that were sick, and China did not want this to get out. And some have said that this has even impacted. Some have said that this has caused murders by the authoritative government of China. So I'm not trying to say that's going to happen here, but I'm trying to say that the fact that they were censoring the amount of numbers that came out of China in China, that's no different from our administration saying, all right, all the new numbers, all the new cases, all the new deaths that come out, it needs to come through us first. That's that's pretty alarming. Um, I thought that was I thought that was something to talk about. And I'm trying to pull up the stream here because I want to see the comments. Where are the comments? Okay, I got Team Bernie here. Team Bernie from Dan Lewis. Team Bernie all the way, bro. And I'm actually going to get onto the Bernie subject right now as soon as I find this stream that I'm looking for. I guess it's on this stream here, right? Top chat. Oh yeah, by the way, guys, if you're tuning in, please feel free to comment. Okay, so the next topic. I didn't want to go too long here. I know you guys want to spend your Saturdays day drinking, doing whatever you do on a Saturday. But all right. So the second thing I want to talk about was the topic of Bernie Bros. Okay. This is something I wanted to talk about for a little while. I haven't had the chance to do it. I'll use this time to do it right now. But so this whole idea that Bernie Sanders has a faction of his fan base that are completely unorthodox and mean online. I think has gotten out of hand here, and I think it's a very cheap campaign tactic masquerading as journalism and social activism, as Glenn Greenwald said in his Intercept article. But so pretty much here, so for people who don't really know what this is, a Bernie bro is the narrative that Bernie has Bernie's fans in particular. Bernie Sanders has fans that no other candidate's fans do. They do things that no other candidate's fans do, including being mean to people online, being mean to specifically journalists online or other campaigns. And as a Bernie bro, I mean, to kind of put it in a broad tense, this is completely used to defame Bernie Sanders, to make his fans look bad. And I mean, people, first of all, a lot of people are on Twitter. A lot of people are online. A lot of Bernie fans are on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. And that's our voice, pretty much. Other than YouTube, that's pretty much our only place to express ourselves when we have a mainstream media that purposely gaslights and lies to the masses in America. Now, when you have people on MSNBC, and I have these clips pulled up, and I'm going to show you very soon, and it's actually very funny, okay? But when you have the mainstream media constantly lying to people and gaslighting them, their own viewers, there is going to be a retaliation. You're going to build a domino effect. There will be a manifestation of angry people that the mainstream media have been gaslighting. Okay? This is inevitable. This has happened throughout history for as long as we know it. So when you do that to people, they will get angry. Now, it's not even, and I'm gonna separate these cases here, but it's not even all Bernie Sanders fans. I mean, I am in that world. I'm in that Bernie world online, and the majority of them only criticize journalists who lie on Twitter or other campaigns who lie about them or lie about Bernie Sanders. I'll give you an example. Just recently, Bernie Sanders said, they keep asking Bernie, if you were do you believe the super delegates should go to the convention or something? And they're basically trying, what at least Elizabeth Warren's campaign said this week, was that Bernie wrote the rules, right? Bernie asked for the rules to change, which is complete bullshit, okay? Because, listen, in 2016, when Bernie was running against Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders would win a few states with the popular vote, the majority of votes, but the delegates would go to Hillary Clinton. And in his defense, in his argument, was that superdelegates who are supposed to represent the people of the states should represent the votes of those people. So he believed superdelegates were fine as long as they represented those voters. So he said back in 2016 when he was invited on Meet the Press, he said, in Missouri, where he lost bad to Hillary Clinton, if Hillary won the majority of the votes there, then I think the superdelegates should vote in favor of what the voters chose, in favor of Hillary Clinton in that case. Now, if we go to West Virginia, where the majority of voters voted for Bernie, he was arguing that the superdelegates should take a hard look at who their constituencies, who they voted for, and then go with who they voted for. That's your responsibility as a superdelegate. Okay, we all knew this. As Bernie fans, we all knew this. Well, this week, Elizabeth Warren and her team lied about Bernie, and pretty much the mainstream media, the pundits on MSNBC, on CNN, they say, well, Bernie changed the rules. He changed the rules in favor for the superdelegates, so why is he complaining now? And that's such bullshit. Okay? Bernie never said that. So the reason I bring that up is because the fact that all these people are lying, you will naturally have a response from people who are being lied about and lied to. They will reply on Twitter the way with an angry response, and so that's natural. This is humanity. We need to analyze what happens when you stick people with a stick. You poke people with a stick for the longest time. You can't just expect them to let you keep doing it without reacting. Okay, so I pulled up this Glenn Greenwald article here, and I'm getting comments from people. I got a comment that says been gaslighting Trump since he took office, which is true. I said in the beginning of the show, the mainstream media has been lying about Trump, and they've done their worst. They've exposed themselves during the Trump era. I mean, during Obama's administration, it's for some reason the press and the mainstream media were so lenient on his administration. I guess for the access or whatever. But now they're pretending to be doing adversarial journalism, and they've really put themselves in a bad position when we look at further future historians will look at history. And then same with Bernie in the 2016 election, and the same's going on right now in 2020. And I can't wait to pull these videos up. But so I just wanted to use this segment to kind of shit on the whole Bernie bro narrative. Now, are there people online who take it too far? 100%. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's not true. The union workers in Nevada who were sent death threats because they pretty much said that they don't want their health care to be taken away. And I believe the New York Times podcast did a special on this, where they pretty much said that the culinary union workers of Nevada pretty much spent 6 years fighting for health insurance. They were fighting for health insurance through this union. And for 6 years, they were fighting for this. And that meant losing their jobs, losing their benefits, and fighting for 6 years. Okay, valid. So now that Bernie comes along and says, we're going to switch it up and I'm going to give you my health insurance, my health care, I understand where there is a clutching of the purse reaction where people are like, hold up, I've been fighting for this for 6 years, and now how am I supposed to trust you that you will keep our insurance that we've been fighting for? Completely valid. I understand. We need to have a more healthier discourse where we can kind of hear each other out and be like, okay, you have a very valid reason to be skeptical about Medicare for all. But apparently there were some Bernie Sanders supporters who attacked them, sent death threats. I was watching yesterday the Showtime series The Circus, where they interviewed the culinary workers of Nevada, and they kind of explained how they were just terrified by the death threats from Bernie Sanders supporters. That's not right. And so I say to those people, I mean, if you have to think to yourself, before you post things online, before you send people death threats, is this going to help Bernie Sanders? If you want Bernie Sanders to become the president, by you sending death threats to people, after you know that the mainstream media will use this as a reason to crush Bernie, and other campaigns will use this as a reason to crush Bernie, even though it's bullshit, and they use that, and they lie about it, and they expand it into something that it's not, you're still feeding this narrative by doing what you're doing. And, so these people who are using their activism for Bernie Sanders in a way that is nefarious, cut it out. You got to cut it out. I find myself sometimes taking a second when I'm tweeting, especially when it's towards Neera Tanden or Jason Johnson, people on Twitter who are relentlessly lying and just are so I can't even describe it right now. They're just entitled. They're terrible people. Let's put it that way. Terrible people on Twitter. I go to tweet at them, and I take a second, and I'm like, does this help Bernie? Does this help our case as a whole? And you don't know how many tweets I have drafted now, because I took a second. I took a deep breath, and I was like, you know what? This isn't going to help anyone's case, and so I decided not to do it. Okay. So I think there's no harm in taking a hard look in the mirror and just asking yourself, how does this further our agenda? Same way when you're screenwriting, right? When you're writing a screenplay and you write, aspects of the play or the script that do not push the plot further. They teach you this in screenwriting. If you're writing, if you're just writing to write, and you have to, when you're revising your script, you have to look at where things don't push your story forward, and you have to clean it up. It's kind of in the same idea here. Make sure everything you post online, the things you say to people, especially when family come over and you discuss things, you kind of have to take a step back and say, all right, what do I say that furthers people's understanding to the policies and the candidate that I like? So, I want to take this moment to kind of, make people understand that, yes, Bernie bros have been used to smear Bernie Sanders supporters in a pathetic attempt at discrediting Sanders and his movement. 100%. 100%. And like I said, when you have a mainstream media that are constantly smearing Bernie Sanders supporters and people who want health care for people, to get people out of poverty, for a minimum wage of $15 an hour or more, for education, free education for all. When people have debt, student debt, and they have to work 4 jobs just to make a living, people are angry. Okay? And this goes on the left and the right. People are angry, and it needs to be understood. And that's why when the mainstream media doesn't do that and they smear people, as opposed to trying to understand them, you get a reaction that is nasty. We are human beings. That's what happens. Okay? You can't, and Bernie Sanders shouldn't have to sit there, and I hate when people say, is he doing enough? Is he doing enough for all the shit people are saying online? He's already disowned those people. Do you want him to come out with a press conference every time Joe Schmo hashtag 69 420 posts something nasty to Neera Tanden? Does he have to give a press conference every single time? When is enough? When is enough? Okay? It's bullshit. And it's just being used to smear the movement. And you know that. We all know that. I think Bernie Sanders has done more than enough to speak on some supporters of his, definitely not a majority, definitely a small minority, who are letting their anger, some of them mental illness, come through the roof and expose themselves. Sanders has never, ever said anything that would make these people act this way. It is the anger of the shrinking middle class that have found a movement in Bernie Sanders. And that includes very well-educated people. And that also includes very mentally ill people. Or people in the middle who just cannot contain the anger that they feel towards the establishment and the neoliberal order that we live in today? Can we be honest with ourselves? We just have to be honest. I feel like people tend to pretend that we live in this black and white cartoon. And things have to be this way or that way. And they forget that we are so complex. And things are not black and white. Okay? I need a second to catch my breath here. God. When you're doing these things, it's hard to breathe. I'll get on to my next story very soon. Just trying to spread the podcast a little bit. Let's see here. Any comments? Have I got any comments? Nothing yet. How are we all feeling today? Did you guys like the music in the beginning? On Saturdays, I like to play some sort of salsa music to get things going, you know. Where's my live stream? All right. Let's do another story. For watching. Cool. Like I said, if you guys want to comment, get some conversation going, I am more than happy. All right, I'm going to go on to the next story now. Cameras are on? All right, cool. All right, so back on this whole Bernie bro narrative thing, which really is starting to impact people because I have family members at home who have told me, people who know that. By the way, I wanted to say one thing. I have some people that, it's so funny. I have some people who have known I've been a Bernie supporter for a while now. And so I've had back and forth with these people for 4 years. There's a couple, I'm not going to name names. It's not a very nice thing to do. But there are some people that I've had back and forths with, whether it be family, whether it be friends, who have always commented. That's one of the most annoying things, by the way, to do. Comment on every single post I post. I post for my followers, my Facebook friends, and some people take it upon themselves to comment on each and every one of them to try to disprove what I post for their own egos, their own narratives, their own followers. But it's like, listen, dude, this is my page, so I'm posting this for my people, so you don't have to comment on every single thing I do. But putting that aside, there are some people that I have had back and forths with the past 4 years, right? Those people are all, by the way, supposedly on the left, Democrats, right? And basically for 4 years, I've just had comment after comment after comment from these people who say, you, Bernie, blah, blah, blah. You're wrong about this. You're wrong about that. centrism is the way to go, neoliberalism is the way to go, or Bernie bros, blah 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 blah. Okay, and I've one thing again back on what I was talking about before, and just being graceful in opposition with people and acting in a way that helps your argument. Because when you curse people out, it doesn't help your own argument. It makes people think, okay, this person's unhinged, and why even bother arguing with them or debating in an intellectual conversation? Give people, everyone has a different way of thinking, so let them say how they think, and then you should expect the same from them, and that's it. So I've always tried to lead by example, at least on Facebook, with that. And people who disagreed with me on Facebook, I kindly disagreed with them back, and that's it. Once insults get thrown my way, it's almost like exposure for everyone else to see, hey, listen, my side of the argument has the composure here, and the other side is emotionally, whoever's, arguing with me is emotionally unstable. So it's kind of a win-win. But I pretty much bring this up because there have been 2 cases so far where now that Bernie Sanders is the front runner, there's this one person who has been saying for 4 years now, vote blue no matter who. Vote blue no matter who. I fucking hate Bernie Sanders. I hate his supporters. I hate you. They didn't say that exactly to me, but that's pretty much what they were trying to say. And they basically, so just recently, I'm starting to see like this just unfolding of this unfolding of how they really feel. And so this Democrat finally said, I have had it with the Bernie bros. I've had it with Bernie Sanders. I'm not voting blue no matter who. If Bernie Sanders is the nominee, I'm voting for Trump. And I think that's so funny because it's like you think you know who you're debating, but finally someone's true colors come out. And it's interesting how someone can get so pissed off at poor people getting health care that they finally give up on their political party and go extreme. And then there was someone else again who is constantly fucking harassing me online about my very left views, and then ultimately deciding that they're going to vote for Trump. So I thought that was funny because it's like these people don't have principles. I mean, if you stand by principle, you'll go in one pattern predominantly your entire life. But when your principles are standing on eggshells, or you're on a surfboard with your ethics and your morality and your pudding, you just start going in all these different ways. But so I just want to bring that up. But in this segment, I did want to talk about this MSNBC freakout, and basically how MSNBC is the worst channel right now, other than CNN. And I got a comment here, by the way. And this comment says, just an analysis. I'm sure you've gotten crap from other Trump supporters as well, but it seems to be mostly liberal Democrats / Bernie haters that are giving you the worst time. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I said on Twitter, something, this was like one of my only tweets that actually went viral, but I basically said, I have more respect for those on the right who disagree ideologically with socialism and Bernie Sanders than I do those on the left who hate Bernie because he's not a Democrat or because MSNBC said so. That took off on Twitter because it's true. There are people, and some of them in my family, I must say, who wait to hear what MSNBC has to say first before they make up their mind about anything. And so, yeah, it's true. Like, if you don't agree with socialism, and I've had guests on the podcast before who we've talked about this, but we can have that debate. But if you just hate Bernie because you just hate him, because MSNBC has been nonstop telling you to hate him, then you're not an intelligent person. You're not. I'm sorry. I'm letting myself get worked up. But MSNBC, if you haven't heard, so Bernie Sanders today, by the way, I didn't even bring this up yet. Today is South Carolina primary. And so that is happening today, and I'm actually going to add to my list here that I'll do predictions later. Let's see, predictions. Anyway, so Bernie Sanders won Nevada last week in a landslide victory over a distant Joe Biden in second place, and basically, MSNBC, I turned it on and I watched it because it was comedy gold, I think, because they were freaking out so much. It's like, it's almost like watching the election back in 2016 and watching all the pundits kind of slowly realize that Trump was going to win. And it just to kind of witness it on their faces is hysterical. And it's like the cognitive dissonance in real time. And so I turned on MSNBC and I watched hours of it on last Saturday, as Bernie Sanders was the winner of the Nevada caucuses last week. And so part of this freak out was the funniest things I ever saw. For those watching who haven't seen them yet, I'm going to quickly recap it for you. I think the funniest one was where this reporter from MSNBC was live at one of the precinct areas. And she's pretty much reporting to MSNBC all the voters that were behind her. And she's like, I'm live here at this precinct right now. And as you can see, if you look behind me, there are tons of people here, tons of voters, very enthusiastic and excited. And they're all here to vote for Bernie Sanders. Back to you. Yo, I kid you not. That's exactly how it went down. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I'm surprised that they let themselves, get that far on camera. Like, let themselves be exposed that far. It was so funny. I thought it was so funny. I lost it. I completely lost it. And I kept watching that video over and over and over again. That was the funniest one. I have other clips for you. This one actually is from the New Hampshire primary. But this is Chris Matthews pretty much talking about Sanders' win in New Hampshire and warning that executions will happen in Central Park because of Bernie Sanders winning the primary. Here, listen to this.
I have my own views of the word socialist, and I'll be glad to share them with you in private. And they go back to the early 1950s. I have an attitude about them. I remember the Cold War. I have an attitude towards Castro. I believe if Castro and the Reds had won the Cold War, there would have been executions in Central Park, and I might have been one of the ones getting executed. And certain other people would be there cheering, okay? So I have a problem with people who took the other side. I don't know who Bernie supports over these years. I don't know what he means by social. 1 week it's Denmark. We're going to be like Denmark. Okay, that's harmless. That's basically a capitalist country with a lot of good social welfare programs. Denmark is harmless.
It's pretty clearly in the Denmark category, yeah.
Are you sure? How do you know? Did he tell you that?
Well, I mean, that's what he says, and that's what his agenda calls for, right?
Yeah.
He's not calling for
Let's
I love Chris Hayes coming in and saying, well, that's basically what Bernie Sanders is for. He's like a Denmark Democrat. He wants healthcare for people. He's not asking for people to be assassinated in the middle of Central Park. So Chris Matthews melting down completely. And so I thought that was so funny. So that was back in New Hampshire. That was Chris Matthews' first kind of freak out moment. Second, again, the Nevada caucuses happened on last Saturday, and we had a similar moment with Chris Matthews' impromptu Red Scare, just Cold War like moment of freak out, and it's hysterical. Listen to this.
What is going on here, and is this any way to pick a nominee?
Well, I don't think so, but it is the way we're picking this one, and it looks like Bernie Sanders is hard to beat right now. I'm with Carville all the way in terms of the dangers of what lies ahead in November. I'm very much aware of them. They're sitting on so much Oppo research on Bernie, what he said in the past about world affairs, how far left he is. I'm not sure how far left he is, but they're going to make the most of that in terms of world politics. They're going to kill him. But I think it's a little late to stop him, and I think that's the problem. By the way, if you look at the pattern, it's dynamic. Bernie won the popular vote in Iowa. He won it again in New Hampshire. It looks like he's going to win it here when they finally get a vote. Bernie's been winning consistently, and I think it's mathematically understandable. Every time we poll, every time Steve and everybody polls, 2/3 of the Democratic vote, 2/3 of people who call themselves Democrats are either liberal or very liberal. All Bernie ever had to do, and he's done it beautifully, is get a majority of that, and he's up to the mid-30s. If you get half of 67, you're into the mid-30s, and that's where he's gotten it a little better. Biden, his only prayer was to consolidate the third of the vote that's moderate and conservative. And he got nowhere near clearing that field. Nowhere near. That's split up 4 ways now. And so with new people coming in, Deval Patrick came in, he didn't make it. Bloomberg is in, he's probably going to survive a bit longer because of his money. But that field wasn't cleared. The only way Biden could win in that 1/3 of the vote that's either moderate or conservative is to sweep it. He got nowhere near. Bernie, on the other hand, did his job. He got more than a majority of that 67%. That is the name of the game. It is pretty much over unless that changes. I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy.
Here we go.
I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart. And I think he's damn right on this one.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Chris Matthews, I don't know if he's drunk. I think he's drunk. I think he's taken like a couple of whiskeys before he goes on air. But it's unbelievable that so Bernie Sanders would be the first Jewish nominee, the first Jewish president of the United States, and for him to say that is completely unaware of what this could mean, what this could, how some people could take this. And how do you compare winning a primary to Nazis invading France? How does that? So anyway, and he mentioned James Carville at the end. James Carville also going on MSNBC and saying that Bernie Sanders is who Putin wants to be president. And I put Russia in this string here because I did want to bring that up towards the end. And so I'll save that towards the end. But in case you didn't know, Chris Matthews had to apologize. And it's pretty funny. Just hear this one out.
Tight race between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders down in South Carolina. Much more on that in a moment. Before getting into tonight's news, I want to say something quite important and personal. As I watched the one-sided results of Saturday's Democratic caucus in Nevada, I reached for an historical analogy and used a bad one. I was wrong to refer to an event from the last days, or actually the first days of World War II. Senator Sanders, I'm sorry for comparing anything from that tragic era in which so many suffered especially the Jewish people, to an electoral result in which you were the well-deserved winner. This is going to be a hard-fought, heated campaign of ideas. In the days and weeks and months ahead, I will strive to do a better job myself of elevating the political discussion. Congratulations, by the way, to you, Senator Sanders, and to your supporters on a tremendous win down in Nevada.
So I thought that was an okay apology. That was a pretty good apology. But one thing I wanted to highlight about the fact that Chris Matthews apologized. Like, think about that for a second. Chris Matthews apologized after a Twitter campaign of Bernie Sanders supporters completely pissed off about the things he's been saying and how MSNBC would allow this to keep going on. Obviously, this was like the second or third time Chris Matthews has said something like this. So the fact that this has snowball effect into a public apology, I think, is a win. It is a huge win. We had the Nevada caucus win for Sanders, and then you had a grassroots win with the people essentially getting 1 and mainstream media 0. So I did think that's important because I want people to understand that they have power. We do have power online, especially in numbers, and that's kind of something that Sanders is trying to tell people with his movement. And also one thing to note, actually, after this happened, MSNBC apparently is looking to bring more pro-Bernie voices on their air, some contributors, and this is pretty much an attempt to kind of clean up their act that they've been doing lately. Dr. Jason Johnson, a black contributor on MSNBC, who called Bernie Sanders' surrogates Nina Turner and Bree Joy, these black girls from the island of misfits, pretty much. It's pretty much saying racist things that I guess is okay to say if you're black in his mind. This is an MSNBC contributor. The fact that they can just get away with saying this shit is it's insane. Pete and Rick Show, thank you, by the way, for watching and commenting. He says Chris Matthews is apologizing, but he doesn't mean it. He was made to apologize. Yeah, totally, man. Totally. I mean, this guy's like 70-something years old. There's no way he's self-reflecting right now and being like, oh, wow, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Why am I bringing my Cold War fear tactics on air? Like, he's not like evaluating himself. He's not doing that. He was forced to do that. And the fact that actually MSNBC sat down Dr. Jason Johnson, who I just said was giving racist comments against Sanders surrogates, they sat him down, and meanwhile Chris Matthews is still on every night, which is not okay. It kind of makes you wonder how they're choosing to sit people. But last thing I want to say on this matter before we wrap it up into with the last segment here, something truly amazing happened on MSNBC. It was Sunday of last week, I believe, when Joy Reid was doing her show. Another disgusting person I can't stand. Maybe she's getting better. Maybe she's starting to realize that, where the wind is blowing. But I can't stand her, and she's a constant liar. I don't know how I'm about to butcher this name, but this is a contributor on MSNBC. His name's Anand Giridharadas. Anand Giridharadas. He went on MSNBC and completely did something unlike anything I've ever seen before. And he gave a moment of truth. You just got to hear this.
I think this is a wake-up moment for the American power establishment. From Michael Bloomberg to those of us in the media, to the Democratic Party, to donors, to CEOs, many in this establishment are behaving, in my view, as they face the prospect of a Bernie Sanders nomination, like out of touch aristocrats in a dying aristocracy. Just sort of, how do we stop this? How do we block this? And there is no curiosity. Why is this happening? What is going on in the lives of my fellow citizens in this country? They may be voting for something that I find it so hard to understand. What is happening? What is happening? This is a moment for curiosity in America. I think about this network, which I love, which you love, and I think we have to look within also. Why is a lobbyist for Uber and Mark Zuckerberg on the air many nights explaining a political revolution to us? Why is Chris Matthews on this air talking about the victory of Bernie Sanders, who had kin murdered in the Holocaust, and analogizing it to the Nazi conquest of France? The people who are stuck in an old way of thinking, in 20th century frameworks, in gulag thinking, are missing what is going on. It is time for all of us to step up, rethink, and understand the dawn of what may be, frankly, a new era in American life.
Amazing. Anand, that was probably the best thing I've heard on the mainstream media my entire life. He pretty much told Joy Reid to her face, "You are out of touch, perhaps." Well, he gave her credit. He said, "You're trying," which is why I said maybe Joy Reid is trying. And I don't want to have that radical mentality that no one is redeemable. I'm sure we're all redeemable. We're all human beings. But Joy Reid, he's saying to her, like, you're trying. But you have people like Chris Matthews on air, equalizing this to the Nazis invading France. This is just complete out of touchness. And MSNBC has to take a moment and realize that you are contributing to the dumbing down of America. And he pretty much, he knocked it out of the park. He was so good. And so that wraps it up with the topic of MSNBC. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Russia. Now, if you didn't hear, last Friday, it came out conveniently the day before the Nevada caucuses that Russia is supposedly trying to elevate Bernie Sanders' campaign to essentially win the nomination. For anyone who's listened to anything I've said in the past knows that I've been very skeptical about the Russia narrative. And as I said in the beginning of the show, Russia has been used as a scapegoat by the Democratic Party since losing this election to Donald Trump in 2016 to evade the consciousness of society towards a boogeyman so that they don't look with clear eyes towards the Democratic Party as to why they are losers. And the Democratic Party knows this. So they're using Russia. Somehow they have an in with our intelligence community. And so our CIA continually tell us that Russia's hacking our election without any evidence to prove it. Now, if I was on the mainstream media right now, if I was on MSNBC, if I was on CNN, they'd say, "Are you doubting our intelligence community?" And it's like, hold up. You're journalists here. You're journalists. Are you trying to erase the fact that our intelligence community has lied to us continually in the past? Consistently have lied to us in the past. They've lied to us about Vietnam. They lied to us about Iraq. They lied to us about 9/11. They continue to lie to us time and again. They've tortured people. The CIA is not to be trusted. If you're a basic person with basic knowledge of American history, you know that the CIA is a very sketchy entity. Okay? So for journalists to uncritically peddle what the CIA has to say, it's so infuriating, because the journalist's job is to inform their viewers what is going on and the context of what's going on. And if you just say, "Oh, Oh, you don't believe our intelligence community? What are you? So are you saying essentially you're like Trump? So Trump, and this is something I have to give Trump credit for, because Trump knows this. He knows how corrupt the mainstream media is and how they're trying to use this against him. So that's why he's been saying for years now, where's that evidence? Like, it's the Russia hoax. And so what the mainstream media says, what the Democrats say, they say, what do you not trust our intelligence community? Now, I think Trump is being careful. He's playing politics, and he doesn't say, what, the same intelligence community that lies all the time? I think he's playing it safe, but that's essentially the truth here. And it's, if you think about it, it's a little scary, because we're not talking about a group of people, a group of voters, a political party that lies. No, we're talking about a very hidden, sketchy faction of our own government. And it's not easy to take them down. And I think just broadcasting this live to you is putting my life at jeopardy. But, so the headline on Friday was, Russia wants Bernie Sanders, is trying to help Bernie Sanders. And conveniently enough, it happens the day before Nevada caucuses. And reporters actually caught up with Bernie and asked him his thoughts on that. And he said, listen, I think Putin and the Russians should stop meddling in our elections. And Putin, once I'm president, you will not be messing in any more elections. Okay. And then they asked him further, do you know why this would come out today? Why this would come out the day before the Nevada caucuses? And Bernie pretty much said that. He's like, what is this? The day before the Nevada caucuses? He goes, yeah, think about that one for a second. And then he goes, who released that? The Washington Post? Yeah, good friends. And I thought that was a killer moment for Bernie. But one thing I just wanted to kind of talk about, though, is because there seems to be this disagreement within the Bernie fans, where they say he should completely disavow the Russiagate nonsense, which I agree. I mean, the more you feed into it, the more you validate those people. So basically, by Bernie saying, Putin, if you're listening, you're no longer going to be messing in our elections. You're giving the intelligence community and the mainstream media the power, the weight on the consciousness of society who is witnessing this. Their subconscious is being reaffirmed with the idea that Russia is hacking our election, right? It just reaffirms this in the psyches of people's minds, when we just reviewed now that there still lacks any evidence for the public to see that Russia is actually interfering with our elections. Now, are there some Russian trolls that perhaps release some misinformation on Facebook and Twitter? Yes, probably. But did that throw an election to Trump? No, goddamn no, it didn't. Okay? That's not enough to especially for Hillary Clinton to use that as a reason for her loss. She has yet to have any self-reflection and blame herself. And it's really pathetic. But the fact that Bernie keeps playing into this, I think, is kind of a problem. But hear me out. I do, however, believe that he has been briefed by his people, basically telling him, you need to be one step ahead of the media here. Because think about it. Trump, I think in a very ballsy move, in a very strong-mannered way, has denied Russia trying to help his campaign, right? Because the evidence isn't there. Here's the thing: if the mainstream media had this evidence, if the CIA actually came out with evidence and said, here it is, here it all is, and Trump was still denying it, then yes. And I'm sure he would still deny it. But that's another case. But the fact that the CIA has yet to release any information at all, for us to uncritically say, yes, you're telling the truth, for Bernie Sanders to feed into this, they're going to use this against him. That's the problem. Going forward, as you already saw last Friday, the Washington Post released that Russia's trying to help his campaign. If you think that's going to go away, you're very naive. They will continue this. Let's say Bernie starts winning every single state, which is, I don't think going to happen. I'll get on with my predictions after. I don't think he's going to win South Carolina tonight. But let's just say, and I was hoping in a perfect world, he started winning every single state. There would be a complete freak out in the mainstream media and with the intelligence community. For some reason, they don't want Bernie to win either, probably because he's not an establishment neoliberal puppet, as we've had for decades. So, don't think that this is it, because Bernie is going to start winning, and the CIA is going to start saying, release more headlines without any information at all, and the mainstream media, who is tooth and nail trying to get rid of Bernie day by day, will be using this. That basically, pretty much at the end of the day, they're going to be saying, if you vote for Bernie, you're doing Russia's bidding. If you vote for Bernie, you're a Russian asset. That's basically how it's going to start brewing. Because 2020, this election is going to start getting so brutal and nasty. And they will start using Russia meddling in our elections as a scapegoat for you to not vote for Bernie Sanders. Russia hasn't said anything about Joe Biden, so you might as well vote for Biden. This is a serious problem. Bernie, why do you think Russia wants to? They're going to beat it down our heads that Russia equals Bernie. Bernie equals Russia. It's going to happen. And the fact that Bernie keeps feeding into this is a problem. But I do think there is a scenario where maybe this is the right thing. Because if Bernie did what we all wanted him to do, where he said, and this is, again, I wish Bernie did something like this, right? Where Bernie said, oh, Russia is hacking the election? Who said this? The intelligence community? The same intelligence community that's been lying to us for decades and overthrowing governments overseas for decades. He did kind of allude to that the last debate, which was kick-ass. If he starts doing that, the target on his head will be 10 times larger. Now the mainstream media will start saying, Bernie is against the intelligence community. Do you not believe the intelligence community? And they'll start saying Bernie is doing exactly what Trump is doing. And so Bernie, for him to deny this would be, I guess, mainstream media suicide. They will harp on this until their very last breath. So I mean, it's really a complicated thing to think about. On one hand, yes, it would be great if Bernie was like 100% one of us, and was completely transparent with everything that he thought. I do believe Bernie knows this is being used against him by some nefarious people for nefarious reasons. Does Bernie believe that Russia is not really hacking our election? I don't know. He's very old and in old ways of thinking. He's been thinking the same way his entire career. I don't know. But if you think about it, you have to think, like, if I was advising Bernie, would I tell him to do this? I mean, as history goes down the road, he will be, his legacy will say that he was an all-time, truth teller. But in short-term thinking, he needs to win this election. And you kind of succumb to the mainstream establishment talking points to not be a target by the mainstream media. Now look at Jeremy Corbyn. He lost the British Prime Minister election to Boris Johnson because he fed into that that anti-Brexit narrative, which we all know now was a mistake. Unless now, some people are saying this is the equivalent to Bernie and Russia. I don't think so necessarily. Now, if it comes out in the next year or two, and Bernie, let's say in the next year, Bernie doesn't win the nomination. If it comes out in the next year that Russia hacking our election was a complete and total hoax, and there's evidence for it, let's just say like a WikiLeaks document gets released, and everyone and the masses understand that this was a hoax this entire time, then yes, and let's say it happens before Bernie becomes, fights to the convention, then yes, this is a Jeremy Corbyn moment because Bernie's been feeding into it. But I don't think that's going to happen. And so I guess ultimately my advice is I think it's good that he's being careful, I think it's good that he's being careful because you don't know what how they could ultimately destroy his campaign if he did the opposite. They're already harping on him, but that's my thoughts on that. Sorry to talk for so long. The last thing I wanted to say here was that the New York Times released this week that the Democratic Party is willing to risk party damage to stop Sanders. And so it's now out in the open. I've been saying for a little while now, and I've been laughed at for 3 years. Okay? And it's a little personal to me. Okay? The people that I care about, people that care about me, people close to me, who think they know more than me. And I'm not saying I know more than them, but being in the political world, you tend to see patterns. And when people are outside that world, they mock you for whatever reason. But I've been not made fun of, but kind of laughed at with what I think is going on and what's going to happen. And one of the things I've been saying for 2 years now, about 2 years now, 2.5 years, is that not Russia. The Democratic Party would rather another 4 years of Trump than nominating Bernie Sanders. I've been saying this for 2.5 years. Other people on the left have been saying this for 2.5 years. I didn't make this up myself. There has been a joint consciousness there. But the Democrats would rather lose to Trump than elect Bernie Sanders as a nominee, because their whole business practice of the Democratic Party right now is to use lobbyists, to use super PAC money, corruption, and all of this would end if Bernie Sanders was the nominee. And the Democrats are doing pretty fine so far with Trump being president. If you don't think so, you're not paying attention. They are fundraising. They are on television. There are photo ops. They're writing books. Trump is the best thing that's ever happened to them. But the possibility of electing someone who will completely clean house your organization of corruption, pretty much the business practice that you've been doing, is pretty much accepting the fact that you're going to lose your job, kind of thing. And so basically, I've been saying this for 2.5 years now, and now it seems out in the open that yes, the Democrats are going to try to force Sanders out of the race, and they're trying so hard to do that. And it makes you think. So I've been saying for 2.5 years now that they would do this. And here they are, now they're doing it. I also actually have been laughed at by people close to me who I love dearly. I will never let politics get in the way of the people I love. And if it does start getting that way, I try to change the subject, or I just flat out don't let it happen. Sometimes it does happen. I'm trying to be an adult, but I have been saying, I think for since the people started running for president, and we had Kamala Harris, we had Beto O'Rourke, we had all these candidates, I've been saying, oh, the nominee is going to be Sanders. The nominee is going to be Sanders. Because knowing what I in 2016, no one else has the base and passion and size, crowd size of Sanders. It's going to be Sanders. And they laughed at me. I legit had a situation where people laughed at me. They said, you poor Bernie bro, you poor idiot Bernie bro. Well, it looks like Sanders is going to be the nominee. And I was right. And one more thing I'll predict, and this is pretty much wrapping everything up, because I've gone on way longer than I planned on to. I was going to do like a 20-minute video, and now this has gone so long. But if you're still around watching, I really appreciate it. I predict that if the Democratic Party puts their thumb on the scale again and robs Bernie of the nomination again, you will see riots, protests in Milwaukee at the convention. Then Trump will win, whether it's against Biden, Warren, Bloomberg. Trump will win again. Trump will win against anybody unless it's Sanders. And then you will see the end of the Democratic Party forever. There is no way that you can rob the nominee from the people and expect them to go out in droves to vote for your chosen nominee. Progressives aren't going to do that. And they know it. They know it. And I think people are aware now. They know this isn't going to... It's not going to be like 2016 where... Because in 2016, Hillary kind of played dirty politics and rigged the nomination against Sanders, but it was in a more hidden way. In a way that people who even follow politics were like, yeah, but, you know, it wasn't rigged. We all know it was rigged. But for people to still, to this day, say it wasn't rigged, that's how well accomplished, or you know, that's how well it was done. Now, if the Democratic Party robs Sanders of the nomination, it'll be so blatant that even those not on the progressive wing of the party will ultimately observe and witness how the Democratic Party just chose their own nominee, and to the point where they can't blame progressives anymore. They really can't. I mean, most people would be like, well, holy crap, if I had someone I was rooting for get completely stolen of the nomination, I totally understand where they're coming from. So I do predict that the Democratic Party will end. It will seize people, progressives, and a lot of people in the middle, moderates, pretty much voters in general, who want to be part of something new as they see people, especially young people, pretty much moving towards a new People's Party. I think most people will kind of move and gravitate in that direction. Those who then remain in the Democratic Party will be seen as, people who don't know how to evolve, people who want to be part and associated with that Democratic Party that rigged a that pretty much interfered with an election. Oh, the non-democratic Democratic Party. I'm trying to think in the future here, like some premonition on this happening. And people are not going to want to be part of that party. So I'm telling you right now, if they take this from Bernie, that's it. That's it. And this is something I'm laughed at constantly at work, at home. They're like, that's not going to happen, man. The Democratic Party's been around for 200 years, and there's too much going on, and there'd be too much organization to get that done. No, dude, I'm predicting right now that's it. That's going to be it. Yes, of course it'll still be around, but it'll be around like the Tea Party is around. It'll be around like the Green Party is around. It'll be around like, the rent is too damn high party is around. That'll be it. Kiss your popularity goodbye. You can't. It's just ridiculous. But in essence, as time's wrapping up. Other predictions I wanted to say that I've been thinking about for a little while. Today again is the South Carolina primary. And I think the latest few polls have shown Biden on top, Bernie pretty much 4 points below. Very tight. It's almost in the margin of error. I do think there's a possibility that Bernie pulls an upset tonight. I'm going to throw it out there. I do. I mean, it could be hopeful or wishful thinking. It's possible. I do think if those polls are correct, polls are not really accurate. And if your polls say that there's a tight race, I think Sanders supporters in particular get underpolled. I mean, how many of you have been polled? I've never been polled. So I think Sanders supporters, who are predominantly young people who don't have landlines, who aren't really polled much, I think they come out and surprise people, and Bernie pulls an upset tonight. I think it's possible. You know what's funny? I originally, before I started making this video, I was predicting that Biden wins by a slight margin, like 5%. But now that I think about it, and we'll see. I mean, things will change after this podcast is long and finished, and the evening comes upon us. But maybe I'm channeling, the universal intelligence. And I'm seeing the future right now, but I'm in the moment shifting my prediction. I think Bernie pulls an upset tonight. I don't know why. I could be dead ass wrong, and I'm just making a fool out of myself for anyone watching in the future. But I think Bernie pulls an upset, and he wins South Carolina. As far as Super Tuesday, I think Bernie does very well in Super Tuesday. Give or take one or two, no more than 4 states. And then Bernie goes on to win the nomination, unless they steal it from him. I don't think they're going to do that, though. I don't think they're going to do that. It'd be too obvious, and it'd be too much of a risk. But I'm going to end it there. Again, this has gone on way longer than I had hoped. But thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought. If you had any questions, thank you for everyone who was commenting before. I didn't expect that. I thought this would be a echo chamber, and I would be talking to myself. But I do appreciate some engagement today. And so I wish you guys a great Saturday. Have fun. Get out of the house. Go do things. And by the way, I did want to say one thing. I personally have not been doing this very often. Because of some self-doubt, some self-criticalness, some, rationalization and rumination in my mind, saying there are other people better than me doing this. No one cares what you have to say. But I'm starting to kind of realize that our voices, and if you gravitate towards the things I've been saying, our voices are not very loud at this time. Yes, there are some loud voices doing great work. I'm a huge fan of The Rising, Crystal Ball, and Sagar. I love the Jimmy Dore show.